To the stars of the movie you just saw, Jessica Chastain and Peter Sarsgaard.
Thank you.
All right. Well,
I'm done. That was
yeah. That is nice. They like you. Congratulations on this movie. You know, there's so much to talk about with this. And Michelle Franco, I was just talking to Peter outside about all of his other movies, and they are heavy, and there's so much in them that I found this to be his happiest film. Yeah, he's a brilliant writer and director, but let me start with you, Jessica. What drew you to making a movie with him, knowing, you know, the kinds of movies that he does and that?
Well, I love that dark stuff. I love Michael Haneke, and you know, it's kind of my jam. So this, I was surprised when I first got the script because I love Michel's films and his style of filmmaking. And when I read the script, every turn of the page, I was like, all right, this is where it's going to get really dark. And then actually what I was really moved by was how healing it was. And in some sense, I think it's, when you're doing a story like this, it can be like the obvious choice to make it a revenge thriller type thing. And it's quite rebellious to tell a story about people healing each other, and that's not the norm. So I think he's still got his kind of rebellious side in this type of storytelling.
He does, but you're talking about when you're turning the page, and it could have so gone into a revenge kind of thing, like when she says she's accusing him of all this stuff, and you say, okay, this is that kind of movie. Except I had a hard time believing it when I saw it because I didn't know anything about it, that it would be, because that's just not him. I think he's interested in other things.
Absolutely. I was like, okay, this is going to be a movie written in response to the Me Too movement. We're going to see her take this revenge out on men for what they've done. and then I was like, oh, it's not that. And then I kept going, and then I thought, oh, she's now opening up to him, and we're going to find out at the end he really did it. You know, how dark can it get? And then it wasn't that either. And I also, he kind of like had me in the palm of his hand, because just with those expectations, I think it creates the tension of the film, and then how wonderful to have the deep sigh of relief when it's not all of that. However, the film, I know it's his most heartwarming film, but you know, at the end, it's like, it's not going to get better for them.
No.
You know?
Well, any movie that's dealing with trauma and early onset dementia and all of that, it's not a musical. Peter, talk about from your vantage point of taking on this role. You know, you played all kinds of different parts. You played a lot of bad guys and things. I think he's such an interesting and likable person. And, you know, and
Me?
You too.
Me.
Yeah.
I love this character. I mean, I miss him. I do. It's funny. I mean, I miss some of the bad ones too, to be honest with you. But no, it's like one of those things when you don't even, it really felt like a role that I wasn't acting. You know, like sometimes it just feels easy, and you're like, that's a good sign, you know? And I kind of went through the movie, and I was like, wow, it's just, I can show up, and I know what to do instinctively. I didn't have to think about anything. I mean, one of the reasons why is because he's living in the present moment in a way that, you know, only someone like that can. I'm not accumulating. You know, a lot of acting in movies is like about accumulating things, and the snowball gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's what provides momentum in the movie. And that's not happening to him. And so I found it incredibly liberating, along with the way that Michelle shoots, which is, you know, you may have noticed or not noticed, but everything is a wide shot and a oneer. There's no coverage. So the combination of being in the present moment because of the condition of the character and the style of shooting was like an actor's dream. I don't think there's any actor that wouldn't have just been delighted.
No coverage at all. So
I know of one piece of coverage.
oh really?
He has like 3 days at the end of the shoot because he goes so fast because of the way he's shooting. They get allots for reshoots, additional scenes, anything he thinks he might need because he has a cut film at the last day. So he can go back and he actually added one little piece of coverage in a scene I know of.
Did you do a lot of takes though, to know you have it right in the picture?
Yeah, we spend quite a long time on the scene, and you don't really take breaks because, you know, you're not changing a lighting setup or anything like that. But as he's also kind of writing as we're shooting. So we have this scene, we have the great script he wrote, and then we'll start shooting it, and he's trying to figure out where should the camera be because it's only one place in the scene. And then he can come up each take and say, maybe the next time, can you sit down later, or maybe we don't say this, or can you say this instead, or how about we cut this part of the scene? And then he can also adjust where the camera is. So there's no continuity. You're free each take to kind of do whatever you want, and we're all finding the scene together. But for example, the confrontation scene with the brilliant and mean in this movie, Jessica Harper. He was moving the camera each time, and then I realized when I saw the film, he was doing it, so he kind of ended up with it behind her.
Right.
So she would cover up Sylvia every once in a while and then reveal her. And it's how he's figuring out, how do I tell the story? Because he can't wait for post to tell the story. He's editing in his mind as we're on set.
Or how about, he takes my head off in one scene, and it's a scene where I'm receiving information about an apology. And I just think it's so interesting, this guy who has dementia, he removes his head. But when he sets up like that, if you're a theater actor, you start acting like it's a proscenium if you're not careful, and you're just like, oh, I should, But of course he doesn't want that, and there are a lot of backs in this movie, for sure.
How did you develop this relationship, which is ever evolving? It starts as one thing, it becomes something else. You become like a caretaker of sorts. A little romantically, we don't know where it's going with them, but we have to believe it, and it is so believable. And I know that's a very small, independent budget that does not have probably 3 or 4 weeks for rehearsal for you to get to know each other.
I have never worked in this way for a romance, because normally it all depends on the characters you're playing and what their energy is and how open they are. And we of course did so much preparation before we ended up on set. And then on set, without even realizing it, I was kind of hiding myself away from everyone. And Michel will come to me and give me some notes separate from Peter, and he would do the same with Peter, but we would never talk really, the three of us. It would be a very rare situation. And so we'd say good morning to each other. We were polite, but there was no exchange of energy, I think, when the camera wasn't rolling. And so it wasn't until, and we shot in chronological order, so it wasn't until it was action and we were in a scene together that there was really eye contact and openness and listening to each other. And I think it's so interesting because it built for me of every day of, how do you feel about me? How do I feel about you? Can I trust you? Are you a safe person for me? And I got to ask myself that question because I kept myself away from Peter for the shoot. Wow. So I got to discover it on set.
And I always felt like I was trying to rob a bank. And I was like, no? Okay. And that's a lot of what's going on relationship-wise, and I just wanted to be there the moment she might go like, okay, I'm ready, like I would be totally ready to go. And I love that about the relationship, that I'm pursuing her, but I'm also patient. I'm also, I know she has trauma and I don't know she has trauma. I mean, I may have written it down in my little book, but I talked to a number of people who had dementia on the phone, and my uncle had dementia, who I was very close with. These like memory aids and stuff, they don't go checked. It's like you don't go back to your book and be like, oh right, her father, okay. You know, like, but somehow I still intuitively know that when we go to make love, I have to be a certain way. And I love that. There's a kind of memory that is literal, and then there's a kind of just knowing, and I think he still has that.
And I think for Sylvia, that you love somebody like this that isn't dealing with memory, is very much in the present. And for her, with all of her past traumas and what was going on, this is something new.
I think he's the only person in her life that sees her separate from some kind of trauma or shame. Yeah. You know, every time I was in a scene with Merritt Weaver, who's a genius actress, and it's so subtle what she does, but every single time I did a scene with her, I always felt like she thought she was better than me. I felt like, oh, I could cry. I felt like I was like trash, you know, in these scenes, and she wasn't doing any, but it was just this power dynamic that we had, and that just also kept building. Even the beautiful Brooke, who plays my daughter, you know, every time Sylvia looks at her, it's like, how was Brooke conceived? What was the, you know, there's like shame in every person in her life of how, and of course, her daughter doesn't know any of this, but Sylvia does, and how she relates to people. And so to meet someone who sees her new and fresh and clean and separate from any past shame or trauma is such a gift, because it allows her to see herself that way.
Yeah. And renew herself. And that's what I liked. That's why it was such a happy movie for me, because these characters both, you know, I didn't want to go slit my wrist after this movie. I've seen a few like
they might only have 5 days together at the end of the movie. But
well, we can write our own ending, Peter. I have my ending. You have. Oh, actually, Peter just told me while we were outside, he tried to change the ending of this movie.
I whispered in Michelle. I didn't try to change the ending. I went up to Michelle about halfway through the movie, and I was like, I'm just wondering how much of a Michelle Franco movie this is, because I have a Michelle Franco ending for you if you want one. He was like, oh, let's hear it. And I was like, what if I introduce myself in the final scene? And he was like, oh, no. And I went, okay, I don't want it either. Just offering you because at the end of some of his other movies, like, a boy gets thrown off a boat and drowns, or a guy gets hit by a car, or, you know, like it's, yes. I thought it fit. I was, you know.
A whole beach full of people get murdered. Yeah. It's that's so interesting, his style of working. You've alluded to it here, but there's no trailers, there's no makeup. You did your own hair, is that it? Do you like working like that?
I love it. I got my own costumes. I went shopping.
Yeah, I heard you
with
went to
Sylvia.
Target?
Yeah, I went to Target. I went to Goodwill. Picked out the
You
shoes.
can actually get the outfit at Target.
Exactly. Well, yeah, if you go back a few years, yeah. But I love, but also, you know, I came from like drama school where I'd be working on a Mad Margaret scene, and I'd, you know, black out my teeth and like get all the costume stuff ready. Or I just did Broadway, and every day I did my own hair and makeup. So it's not a strange thing. In fact, I couldn't do it for the eyes of Tammy Faye, clearly. But something like
but
this.
you would have gotten that makeup Oscar too.
No one would have wanted to see the movie. But something like this, it just felt so authentic to be able to show up and, you know, put my shoes on, my jacket on, and put my hair in that top knot, and then go, you know, be Sylvia. I loved it.
I thought it was so interesting because I saw you on, I told you, a Doll's House, and she never left the stage. I mean, she is there on stage during the intermission, staring at the audience or other things, which I'd never really seen before an actor do, which is...
I like to be challenged.
Yeah.
And Michelle Franco for sure does that, which is why he and I have made another film since this.
Since this?
Yeah. So we're going, you know, he's, I think he's going to be a big influence in my creative life.
Yeah.
He already is.
That's very cool.
It's rare that you meet someone who's been successful. I mean, he's won a number of awards at Cannes and Venice and stuff with all of his movies, that doesn't just want to go find the Marvel thing or the, you know, to try to, and he really is just going to make movies like this into the end of time. You know, he wants to make a lot of movies. He doesn't treat each one of them like a little perfect thing. He's like, that's what I was doing then, and that's that one, and now there's the next one. And I mean, right now, during the day, during all of this press, he's writing at the hotel in the mornings. And then he comes out and does press at the second part of the day, because he's a real doer. And it's, I mean, I love being around people that have that energy.
It's interesting too, because he's like one of these directors that does a movie a year. It's one after another. In fact, this is the longest span between movies. It was like 2 years for him. He's just incredibly
He
prolific.
slid a documentary in there.
Yeah. And what was the biggest challenge for you, Peter, though, in bringing this out? You said your uncle had dementia and all of that. So in developing this
The
character.
dementia wasn't really like, there's so many ways that dementia is revealed. It's like as individual as the people that have it, that I did think of my uncle a lot because I really witnessed it. He played center for LSU, and then he boxed, and so he had CTE, and he passed away during COVID, and I was very close to him. And so I thought of his condition, but I didn't want the character to be the condition. I've seen that movie. I wanted to be the obstacle, right? So actually, when I thought of my uncle, I thought of this, how he always went out of his way to ask about people that he didn't even necessarily know who they were. He assumed. I loved it. People would walk into the room to see him, and he'd be like, "Hey, brother, how you doing?" He has no idea who this person is. And he doesn't know that person. He's just thinking he must. You know, and that sort of energy of just wanting to go on living and wanting to go on connecting, and that need was a big part of it for me. And the other part is that the character that's not in the movie is my wife, you know? And that's a big thing. That's why I have such an enormous reservoir of love available, because, you know, I think we grow, you know, with love. And then if that person dies, you still have the space, right? You've experienced it. So I'm a guy looking to, you know, have someone come in and fill that space, I guess, on some level.
Shot in New York, and you know, it's amazing to me that I can still see a movie and see a part of New York I've never seen on film. It's the most photographed in movies in so many ways. Did you find that? I mean, the locations here and all of that?
Oh yeah, I mean I'm a New Yorker, and it's like I was discovering areas that I wasn't aware of. And you know, he's so fantastic too, because what he did is that, you know, the adult daycare center that Silvio works at is an actual center and all the residents are actually live there, and all the staff that's in the film works there, and I was the only one that was kind of, you know, put in, and the camera would follow me around as I would work with everyone. But what he does then is he finds out, okay, what is the salary of someone who works there? What do they make? How much can she afford in rent? Okay, let's look around and find what the rents are in these areas. All right, this apartment works. He'll go inside. He looks around and he goes, all right, I like the way this looks. Maybe we will remove a couple things, but this is her apartment. And so the way, for the most part, things are set, you know, there's no really set designer, because he goes in and he really wants the lifestyle to coincide with the reality of what someone is actually making. And I find in movies they fib that a little bit. You see someone living in a place, you're like, how can you afford that?
Or an actor came up to me the other day and he was like, oh, he's in this movie, and he said, the production design was amazing. And when I went over to the wall and I picked up a book, and it was an actual science book. And I was like, well, okay, that's amazing, but you're a scientist. Yeah, they did their job. But like with this, I mean, there were extraordinary moments of kismet where the guy who owned the apartment where I'm living, his wife had passed away. There's a photo album that she's going through, and there's a picture of a redhead, and that's his deceased wife.
Wow.
You know, it's like, I love it when real life meets art and we kind of interact.
So you're trying to put the set decorators out of business.
We did have one. They moved the water rower out of the living room. I think.
It's all real. I love that though, that you're working with real. That helps you as an actor, doesn't it?
Yeah, but also the very first day of shooting was an actual AA meeting.
Oh,
They weren't actors. That whole first scene, I showed up not knowing that, and I showed up and I was like, oh, I'm in an actual AA meeting.
and you didn't know that
I
before.
didn't know. And everyone was sharing these personal stories, and
But he said he gave them the option, right?
Yeah.
You could make up a story, you could tell a personal story, I don't need to know what it is.
but I showed up like, wow, I thought there were going to be actors here, and now I'm the only actor in the room. How do I make that part of me invisible? Because they're so vulnerable and open and generous, I need to be as authentic as possible to meet them in their generosity.
That's a real challenge. First day of shooting.
He really, and I mean, maybe I don't think, he says he didn't really think about it, but it was a cold ice bath for me that first day going,
Oh,
I
wow.
have to really,
Wow. He's
Show up
thinking,
in a
I'll
big
show
way.
her. She just won an Oscar and now she's on my set.
no trailers, no hair, and an actual AA meeting.
He does have that manner, right? When he says it too. No trailers. No. You know, he doesn't like couch things, Michelle.
You took this to the Venice Film Festival, where, by the way, Peter Sarsgaard won the Volpe Award for Best Actor. And it got an 8-minute standing ovation. You know, that has to be like a mind trip in the middle of this. Here you are in Venice, and the people are reacting to the movie like that. Yeah.
It was hair-raising. I mean, it was really like, we didn't know. You know, like, I had seen a couple of cuts in the movie. I have to say, this movie, seeing it with an audience, being around other people that are going through the experience, not every movie is like this as much as this one is. Really, I've seen audiences like kind of become an organism, you know, like one thing, feed off of each other's feelings, as opposed to watching it on your laptop on an airplane, you know. So that was just extraordinary. To see people moved, you know, that's like a gift.
It's something, and when you do a movie like this, you're going to get, and it opens on December 22nd. That's the other thing. You went to Venice without a distributor, so the movie had to sell too, and it sold very quickly. A lot of movies aren't selling, you know, that go to festivals and things, and this one did. So you have Ketchup, the distributor, and things, but you're going there and you don't know who's going to wind up seeing this movie. You made it independently, and you took a leap of faith in doing this.
Yeah, I didn't make the movie, you know, to get a big paycheck, obviously, or to, you know, I really wanted to collaborate with Michel and be a part of what he was creating. And I knew it would be challenging for me. So the experience of making the movie was more than enough that I needed. Of course, the reception in Venice was really shocking, and to have so many people respond in the beautiful way that they did it. And, you know, Michel, it was during the strike, we had an interim agreement, but Michel's also never sold a film to the AMPTP. He's so independent. He's so incredibly, it just made sense to the route he went with distribution. It was really, he's on his, I can't describe him. I don't think he'll ever, no matter how successful he gets, people keep trying to give him more money to make films, he won't take it. Because when the film costs more money, you lose the creativity. You lose being able to show the gray areas of humanity. It has to be more black and white, good and bad. And these are two characters that make irresponsible choices oftentimes. And that's what I love about it. And so I think he will who knows, he could change his mind and do a Marvel movie in a year. But there's something about him that is such
That would be all oneers.
no special effects, no hair and makeup. Can you imagine no makeup on a Marvel movie? It's a drink of water in an industry where I think we kind of lost that bit of creativity from the 70s, I guess.
By the way, I saw photos from the Venice Film Festival, and you were wearing your glamorously dressed in a SAG strike T-shirt, which was very cool. Yeah, that was great. Thanks for coming out here and sharing your memories of memory with us. Thank you, Peter Sarsgaard and Jessica Chastain, and thank you
Thank
guys.
you all.